Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2020 and to your review of the 2020 British Grand Prix Qualifying session. We love this circuit. I love this circuit. I think it's the best we've visited so far in 2020, and I don't just mean that for the race day. Always throws up a challenge for the drivers. A very windy day today at Silverstone as well. Caught a few drivers out. The rookie on the field and also one of the most experienced drivers as well. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But spoiler warning is ahead if you've not seen today's session already. If you do want to miss out and if you do want to catch the highlights, that is over on the Formula 1 channel. However, if you want a review and analysis of today's session, we will do that in a moment. But as always, if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe if you do enjoy today's video and drop a like. It really helps out the channel. Spoiler warning out of the way. Your result for the 2020 British Grand Prix Qualifying looks like this. No surprise, it was a Mercedes lockout, and it's not really a surprise that on pole position for the British Grand Prix is Lewis Hamilton. Going for the record tomorrow of most British Grand Prix victories and also most home Grand Prix victories by a single driver. He's done a solid job today, 3/10 over teammate Valtteri Bottas, but last year it was the Finn who got pole position and also had just the edge on race pace until a safety car helped out Hamilton. Traditionally, however, this is Hamilton's hunting ground. This is where he's able to really take to the fight to any challenger he's ever had at Silverstone, and it's going to take a mighty drive from Bottas to topple Hamilton tomorrow. But further back, quite a bit further back, we jump into that midfield and it's headed by Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, but only just Charles Leclerc. What an impressive lap time that was in Q3, up in P4. Lando Norris for his home Grand Prix did such a great job last year and is continuing that this year, and also his impressive form he's already shown this year in P5, not bad at all. Lance Stroll, I think we'll be disappointed with 6th place as quite a scruffy session, especially through the Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel complex. Was kicking up the rear a little bit onto the gravel, was getting away with it, but I just wonder if he hadn't been doing that, maybe that could have helped him out. A bit of a scruffy lap though in his final Q3 run. A slight mistake through Abbey cost him. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Carlos Sainz, P7, the two Renaults getting through to Q3, not bad at all. P8 for Ricciardo, P9 for Esteban Ocon, and Sebastian Vettel P10, which I actually don't think is that bad for the amount of, I suppose, questionable comments I've seen on Twitter and even some of the commentators actually during the qualifying session. Your bottom half looks like this just before we get into the real analysis and debate about today's session. Pierre Gasly was P11, out qualifying Alex Albon P12, who does one better than last time out, but still not quite good enough. Got a little bit unlucky, but that car just really isn't to his liking at the moment. Hoping he has a much better day tomorrow. Hulkenberg on his return was P13. I thought that was a very, very impressive job indeed. He outqualified Danny Kvyat and P14. And George Russell through to Q2 again. He's having a great season on Saturdays, but it's not without its bad luck. We'll talk about that in a second. Kevin Magnussen out in Q1 again, P16. The two Alphas, Giovinazzi and Raikkonen 17 and 18. And it's Grosjean and Latifi, your bottom two. And before we jump into the discussion, my favourite bit of any of these videos, your grid for tomorrow looks like this. I think for once, we've managed to accumulate and accommodate for all of the penalties. Fingers crossed that goes to plan, but it's Hamilton and Bottas on the front row. Verstappen and Leclerc, the two that had an incredible fight here last year, sharing the second row of the grid. Norris and Stroll on row 3, Sainz, Ricciardo row 4, and rounding out the top 10 on row 5, Ocon and Vettel. Your bottom half, though, has had quite a few changes. On row 6 is Gasly and Albon. On row 7, Hulkenberg. Magnussen is elevated to 14th. Giovinazzi, Raikkonen and Grosjean also relegated 15th, 16th and 17th. Latifi 18th. Danny Kvyat with a 5-place penalty. George Russell also with a 5-place penalty for ignoring yellow flags during qualifying. Now, shall we start off with the bottom and work our way forward? We mix it up every now and then. And if you are new around here, this is the part of the video, like I said a minute ago, I absolutely love. Sit back and just have a discussion about all the different drivers. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. But we'll start off, I suppose, in that traditional back group that we have. Latifi, the 2 Alfa Romeos, the 2 Hasses, and even George Russell we might as well throw in if we're talking about Williams. Q1, it's pretty much guaranteed now that it's going to be all of these 3 teams that go out, with one of those drivers going through. And at the moment, it's George Russell who seems to have the edge on both of the Alphas, both of the Hasses, and comfortably the edge over his teammate. Latifi had a scruffy-ish session, a big spin on his final run on the outside of Luffield. Hamilton spun there a little bit later on, so Latifi will feel a little bit better about himself with that one. But that Williams car not looking too bad. George Russell in Q1, I think, finished his session in P10. So there was certainly pace in that car again this weekend. Would have Latifi scraped through to Q2? I'm not too sure he would have been able to do so. But when you see the gap to Grosjean, I think it was only 2 or 3 tenths, he could have been higher up on the grid and he will be disappointed with that. But starting in front of Russell tomorrow, in front of Kvyat, knowing he's got a car that's going to be in similar race pace trim to the 2 Alphas and the 2 Haas cars, I think this could be a really good opportunity for Latifi to get his claws out a little bit in Formula 1 and prove his talent and prove that he's ready for the big step up to the Master Formula. George Russell in the other Williams smashed it in qualifying in terms of lap times, once again skating through into Q2. However, the only reason he did that was because he ignored yellow flags with Latifi's spin. Really unlucky. It's just like Hamilton in that opening round of the season in Austria. Slam dunk penalty, starts at the back. But again, just like Latifi, he's going to have a car where he's going to be able to prove his ability. And I'm kind of looking forward to see if Russell can really move forward this weekend. The last couple of weekends, great qualifyings, but has tumbled backwards. The 2 Hasses and the 2 Alphas, it's kind of what we just say every race weekend. What more are they supposed to do? That car is bad, the Ferrari engine is bad. The 2 Alfa Romeo cars are the only team yet to get a single car through to Q2 this season. Kevin Magnussen, the only other driver yet to get through to Q2. All those 3 drivers, though, I think it's so hard to blame it on them. Giovinazzi, actually, I'll give him credit where credit's due, has outqualified Kimi Raikkonen in every single race this season. The gap as well, on average, has been about 2 tenths. So Giovinazzi, that improvements we saw over the second half of last year, is really coming out. And so far, on a Saturday, has been very impressive in 2020. So credit where credit's due for Giovinazzi fans. Grosjean, not great this weekend so far, but at least didn't spin it in the pit lane this year. And Magnussen, unlucky not to get through to Q2. In front of that little group, we've got Danny Kvyat. A quiet session for him, comfortably outqualified by Pierre Gasly, who himself had a great session. I've been so impressed with Pierre so far in 2020. Just like Giovinazzi, who is improving over the second half of last year, Gasly certainly did that when he moved back to Toro Rosso, and that momentum he was building that ended with that podium in Brazil seems to have translated over into this year. And even though last weekend his engine blew up pretty much all weekend long, still dragged that car into Q3 in front of much quicker cars, and for the second weekend in a row has outqualified a Red Bull. This is a circuit he did a really good job at for Red Bull last year. Probably his best drive for Red Bull was at Silverstone last season, was in the mix with Max Verstappen and the 2 Ferraris for the majority of the race, and hey, just missing out on Q2 thanks to the fact that he had the exact same lap time as Lance Stroll isn't a bad idea because he has fresh choice of tyres. A couple of the guys that are in the top 10 start on the mediums, so that won't play into Gasly's hands as much as it normally would, but still a very impressive drive from Gasly. Hulkenberg, P13, we might as well talk about Racing Point up next. I think that's a really good job. Just off his teammate and just off getting through to Q3. What a lap that was. Lance Stroll was on the medium tyres. Hulkenberg was on the soft, so that does have to be mentioned there. But the fact that Hulkenberg was so close, the fact that he's had such little running, and the fact that not only was he 1/10 off Q3, he was 200ths off a Red Bull car. Fair play, Nico Hülkenberg. I'm looking forward to seeing him tomorrow in race trim and seeing how he can cope with that. But I'm more looking forward to seeing next weekend if he's got a little bit of time to work in the simulator over the week, get a little bit more used to the car. Of course, tomorrow, hoping that he doesn't crash or break down at all. That is a good solid 50 laps of running as well. So next week, I think we'll get a better idea of Hülkenberg's pace compared to Lance Stroll. But Stroll himself, not too bad, but not too good. An average session, I would say, for Lance Stroll. I think that car's better than 6th place, but that mistake on the final lap really did cost him. And I think tomorrow in the Grand Prix, that racing point car, if he can get past Norris, may just be able to be in a fight with Leclerc and Verstappen, which would be a little bit surreal, don't get me wrong, but Stroll, he's had a great start to 2020. Now Perez is not going to be taking part in this weekend and what looks like next weekend as well. What an opportunity for Lance to overtake Perez in the standings and lead that team. To give him a bit of confidence and earn back a little bit of that reputation he had a few years ago before he got to F1 in the junior formulas. But Stroll, I think he'll be okay for tomorrow's Grand Prix. In front of that kind of group is this midfield battle, and the big loser in this midfield battle, Alex Albon, 12th in qualifying. You kind of run out of things to say with Alex because he obviously has potential. He obviously has a hell of a lot of speed. It's just that confidence in the car, and for whatever reason, it just isn't to his liking at the moment. Last time out in Hungary, struggled in qualifying but had a fantastic race, and I'm sure the exact same is going to happen tomorrow. He's fantastic at overtaking. It was one of the big issues with Gasly at Red Bull. But that big incident he had yesterday in second practice, I think, did knock his confidence. And I don't think anyone's massively surprised he's way off Max Verstappen at this particular circuit, where Verstappen's done pretty well over the last few seasons. But out in Q2, not ideal. There is positives. We will be able to see overtaking. We will be able to see him on a different tyre strategy, which could come into play if there's a safety car early on or late on. But Alex Albon needs a big race tomorrow. The critics are starting to come out. They obviously will do if results continue to spiral the way they have been. But I've seen a couple of people mention if he'd have got that win in the first race of the season, if he'd have been on the podium in the second race, would we be having these kind of questions and doubts in his ability? I'm not too sure, but certainly out in Q2, 2 weekends in a row, isn't quite good enough for a Red Bull driver. This one is going to rumble on over the next few weeks, but if he can do what he did last weekend in the Grand Prix, he should be fine. Into the top 10, where to start? Sebastian Vettel, I'll quickly mention him. I saw a lot of people moaning about Seb this weekend, but when you consider his car didn't work in FP1, didn't do a single lap, in FP2 did 5 laps, brake pedal didn't work, I think to actually scrape into the top 10 in a super competitive midfield, I don't think it's bad at all. Yes, he wasn't on the pace of Leclerc, and yes, there is a comfortable gap there, 9/10 to his teammate, but I don't think it's as dreadful as people are suggesting. I think what's a really good session, though, is for Renault. Both cars through to Q3, they must be beaming. This is a circuit they've gone well at traditionally over the last few years. Ricciardo got best of the rest, actually, last year. 2017, it was Hülkenberg that was dominantly best of the rest, and I think 2018 as well. So I don't think anyone's massively surprised it's the circuit they were going to be strong at, but this is the first real opportunity for them to show they're in this fight in that midfield. Ricciardo, who has had an average start to the season, hasn't been able to really prove his late braking, his master of the overtake abilities as of yet, but we know it's there. There's been opportunities this year. He's got very unlucky in the second race in Austria, the Styrian Grand Prix. Last time out, Hungary's not great for overtaking, but Silverstone really is. It's a Ricciardo circuit to a T. Can't wait to see him. And Ocon much, much closer to Danny Rick this weekend. So big signs of improvement here for Renault. I'm liking it. Carlos Sainz, P7. I think that's probably the best he could have wished for. Yes, he's behind his teammate, and that'll probably wind him up a little bit, but only just off Lance Stroll, in front of Vettel, the two Renaults. I think that's a solid result. Norris, though, P5. Again, only just in front of Stroll, but that's a huge boost for McLaren. They had a fantastic opening 2 weekends. Not a great Hungarian Grand Prix. This circuit in Silverstone is more of a high-speed circuit than any of the 2 venues we've visited so far. And we've kind of now done a hybrid in Austria, a very slow-speed technical circuit in Hungary, and now a high-speed circuit in Silverstone, so one of each. And McLaren, very good in that hybrid, seem to be very good in the fast circuit like Silverstone, just need to work on those technical ones in Hungary. But this is the pace they were hoping for. Very, very good job from Lando Norris. He was brilliant here last season. Awful strategy took him out of the points, but he was the best of the rest until that awful strategy call late on. P5, expect a good result from him tomorrow. And wouldn't it be great to see him in that fight with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen? Those two so close again. I mentioned it earlier, what a scrap these two had last season. Went on for the entire race. If that can continue tomorrow, even if Mercedes run away with it, we're going to have a great Grand Prix. And if there's an incident between the 2 Mercedes in the opening lap, what an incredible race I think we will have. Leclerc put in a stonking lap to be that close to Max. And I think Ferrari have found a little bit more pace this weekend. They bought in upgrades in the second race in Austria. Didn't really get to use them thanks to a bit of contact on the opening lap. Hungary wasn't a track they were really expecting to suit their car, though Seb did a good job. And here, in Silverstone, looking a little bit better. Obviously not where they want to be, but that close to a Red Bull. Vettel out qualifying Albon. Not bad at all. Max doing what Max does. P3, best of the rest slot. I think a little bit further off of the Mercedes than he would have liked. But I think a lot of people would expect Verstappen to be in that P3 slot. And it's like I always say, the 2 Mercedes just in a class of their own. Bottas 3/10 off in the end of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton, of course, made that mistake in Q2. And I think a few people, after Bottas set the benchmark time in Q2, thinking that maybe Valtteri would be able to nick it. But Hamilton, in the dying seconds, best ever qualifying lap in Silverstone. He just knows when to turn it on. Smashed it. Mercedes, just a bit too good, and fair play to them. Before we go, one of my favourite bits of the weekend, driver of the day and ones to watch. And my driver of the day for Silverstone, the British Grand Prix 2020, I have gone with Charles Leclerc. Really impressed with today's lap time. I kind of mentioned it a second ago that we haven't really been able to see those upgrades realistically in a professional situation where the cars are going flat out on a circuit that suits the Ferrari. And Leclerc, who had a disappointing Hungarian Grand Prix, really bad strategy call from Ferrari, to be in that best of the rest in the midfield, just behind Max Verstappen, almost a second in front of his teammate Sebastian Vettel, I think was a great effort. Lando Norris also did a great job. George Russell technically before that penalty, so I can't really give it to him. I gave a little bit of love to Giovinazzi earlier on. Gasly did another great job. Lots of drivers that did a solid job today, but Leclerc just edges it for me. But I'd love to know your drive of the day in the comment section down below. And tomorrow, my ones to watch, Nico Hülkenberg. Can't wait to see him back in a Formula 1 car, racing again. I know it's only been 3 races, but 7 months with no Hülkenberg. I didn't like it, okay? I didn't like it. I really wanted to stay in F1. Charles Leclerc also, can't wait to see if he can keep up with Max and maybe get a second podium of the season. George Russell, 15th in qualifying, but will start at the back of the grid. Want to see if he can get his race boots on. But for the second weekend in a row, my F1E one to watch for the British Grand Prix is Alex Albon. A great overtaker, and he's going to have to get the gloves off tomorrow. Doesn't have the luxury of 70 laps like in Hungary, but does have the luxury of racing at Silverstone. Plenty of overtaking opportunities, and if there's a safety car and he's on an alternate strategy, keep an eye for Alex Albon tomorrow. And that's your lot. Your British Grand Prix is tomorrow. 10 past 10 is the Formula 2 sprint race. 10 past 2, the Grand Prix gets underway. I, for one, cannot wait. And that is your lot for the 2020 British Grand Prix Qualifying report. Just a quick note, just to save time and make things a little bit easier and digestible for the race reviews and whatnot in future, I'm going to move the feature race result for Formula 2 to my race review video tomorrow. So rather than having the qualifying result on a Friday after the practice report, that will still stay there, but rather than do it a little bit of F2 each day, I'm just going to neatly package it. Here's the result for the feature, here's the result for the sprint race, and here's the result in the standings. So don't worry, great race today. Schumacher getting unlucky with strategy, a first win for Nikita Mazepin, but keep up to date with that tomorrow at the end of the race review. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. If you are new around here, feel free to subscribe, hit that red button down below, leave a like if you did enjoy, dislike if you didn't, really helps out the channel if you give me a bit of feedback. But as always, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.